directors, oh, did it say it to everyone or just to me? It said it to everyone. All right, cool. The tech directors are the folks who take the designer's dreams and manifest them and turn them into reality. And in our theater company, in our theater itself, it's an extra challenging and exciting job, because not only are they, you know, making the sets come to life, they're also like moving the theater around, since we're always changing our configurations. And you know, the amount of space that we have that's not the theater space is quite microscopic. Like all of the support spaces around are just tiny. So it's like an amazing organizational feat to change it around and to move things in and out. And they really have just amazing minds. And I think you'll find it interesting to hear what they have to say. So I will be quiet now and I will pass it to Chris and Jon.
Hey, everybody. Let me answer this real quick. Cool. So we have a presentation prepared for you. We're gonna kind of go through, like, we're gonna start with like what is a technical director, and then like what our process is here at Lookingglass and how we kind of work through receiving the designs, building the show, installing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start our presentation. There we go. So just can everybody see that now? Great. Start with Jon.
Hey everyone, there's me. I'm Jon Woelfer. There's my dog. There's my fiance. There's a couple quick notes about me, a little bit of my recent history. Before coming to Lookingglass, most of my experience in town was over at Steppenwolf Theater. I started there right out of college as the apprentice, kind of worked up through the system until eventually I was kind of going back and forth between two jobs. I was the lead welder working out on the shop floor there, and then I was also serving as a draft person in the office, helping create the drawings that showed everybody what to build. I've also worked with house theater back in the day, and also have been a carpenter at Lookingglass back 2012, 13, right around there, working on Eastland, Little Prince, and a few other shows in there. That's me.
Awesome. That's me. That's my son. That's my wife. That's my son, Silas. He's 3 years old now. There, I think he's like 18 months old, so it's a little bit older the picture. But me, right before coming here, I just started here. This is my first season here. I'm really excited to be part of this company. I was at Utah Shakes as the technical director for the outdoor stage, the Engelstad Theater, while also I was the associate professor of technical direction at Arizona State University, then a TD at Creed Rep, Scottsdale Community College. I've kind of been jumping around the country. I like to travel and I like to change things up, but I wanted to get back to the Midwest, my homeland. So I needed to come back here for my family. So yeah. So what is a technical director? First and foremost, I really think that we're engineers. We're people that take a picture that a designer has in their head that they've drawn out for us, the director's vision, and we have to figure out how to make it physical and actually possible inside of the theater to make it safe, to make it functional, and to make it pretty. Are kind of like the big overarching of what we do. On top of that, we deal a lot with risk management. Everything we do here in Lookingglass is big. We fly people, we move large scenic elements, we build really large things, and we hang really heavy things above people's heads. So we have to mitigate that risk and understand the risks that we are putting on stage and what kind of safety factors we can add to that in order to make sure that something bad doesn't happen, because safety is the first thing that we think about whenever we're doing anything. Everyone's safety is the highest priority to everybody involved. We also deal a lot with money and numbers. We budget all the shows. We get a set amount of money for each of our shows, and then we get the design, And then we need to figure out how much the design is going to cost us to build and make and put on stage. That's just not materials. That's time and labor. That's people hours, and how long it's going to take, how many materials, what materials we're going to be using, so that we can know how much it's going to cost. And then we can take it back and figure out, do we need to adjust the design or do we need to do something different to get us within the numbers that we have to live inside? We're also draftsmen. So we take the designer's drawings and we have to figure out how to build it out of physical materials using steels and woods and plastics and foams, and figure out where every nut, bolt, screw, and piece of plywood needs to go in order to put it together to make the vision possible on stage. And we do this through our carpenters. So this is the main tool that we use to communicate with the carpenters to build the objects that need to go on stage. We are also carpenters. We can't just say, build this. We need to know how to build it so that we can engineer it safely, so that we can communicate what materials to use, when to use the materials, what fabrication techniques to use on stage and in our shops. We're also welders. We do a lot of steel work here, right? Because things need to be strong. They need to be able to stand up to the punishment that they get from a long run of a show. And steel can end up being cheaper and stronger than wood materials for us. We're also riggers. We do a lot of flying things here at Lookingglass. So we need to understand all the techniques that go into flying things safely to make sure that anything that's hung above a person's head, actor, audience, crew member who's working on stage during the day, is safe. And that after we have achieved the safety, then we can start looking at the functionality of it, making sure it functions for the show, making sure it functions for the actor. And after that, we start looking at the aesthetic to make sure that it looks the way that the design team, the director envisioned them wanting it to look. A couple of the duties of a typical technical director: scheduling, the scheduling of flow of resources, time, when do we have crew in, what materials are in, when are materials coming to a theater or to the shop. We're also the shopper and buyer. So we go out and actually buy the materials or order the materials to the purchasing. And then we also do a lot of facility maintenance. So when there's downtime or something breaks in the theater, ceiling tiles fall down, we come over and we got to put the ceiling tiles back up, repair of the floors in the studios on the theater, patching walls, those kinds of things in the theater to make sure that we have a good presentable space for our audiences. Now I'm going to hand it off to Jon to talk about what we do when we get the design.
Yeah, so one of the very first steps on our end is getting the actual design for the show. So, we have our set designer, be it Dan Osling, Todd Rosenthal recently. We've been working a lot with Yu Shibagaki, who created the drawings that you're looking at right there. They send us their ideas. It's, very, very pretty, not a lot of tech information. It's basically what they want the set to look like and what the functionality of it needs to be. So in this slide here, you can see we kind of on the left side there have a ground plan, which is showing the footprint of the show, what the audience configuration for this show is. And then on the right side is a section view of the space, which is basically, a split in half view of the space, showing what you would see if you were standing in the center of the room looking in a certain direction. We also have elevations, which break down each unit of the set. So a lot of times those include pictures, they include details on every specific item in the show. A lot of times they'll go into the props, but really break down everything that the designer is hoping to get out of each specific unit. And then from there, we start breaking down the set on our end. So, it's creating a list of every piece that we need to build in the show, creating a list of how much time and material that we think it'll take to build it. Then, figuring out the seating configuration. We are a very flexible space here, so making sure that we have everything in stock that we need to safely set up the configuration that the designer wants. And then risk assessment. Is the thing safe to do? Is it going to be too dangerous for us? Is there a way to make it less risky and do it in a safe manner that still meets the design of the show? And then after we get the initial designs, we go through a whole revision process of, either cuts for budget reasons or changes to make things a little safer and easier. And then eventually we get to the designs are approved. That is when we are at the end of the road. Everything has been determined as safe. We're on budget. We can make the set happen in the amount of time and money that we have. This is also often where we get a model box from the designer, which is what you're looking at in this photo here. So the designer took the ground plan that they created originally and built a little to scale model of it to help give us a better view of what they want it to look like.
And this is for Lucy and Charlie's honeymoon, in case
Correct.
you're interested.
Which we have built and we'll put on stage someday, and it'll be great. And that sends it back to Chris.
Yeah. So once we have approved designs, then we need to start our engineering process. How are we actually going to make this happen? We've taken our best guess of how much it's going to cost to do this based on our experience. And Jon and I talk closely about how we think we need to build things, but now we actually start diving deep into the numbers. And the decision-making process and how we decide how we're going to do something is we first ask, is it going to be safe? If it's not going to be safe, we go back to square one, right? So then if the answer is yes, it's safe, then we need to ask, does it function well? Are the actors going to be, or is it going to function well for the actors on stage? If the answer is no, we go back to the beginning again, right? And then after we pass those two steps, we look at the aesthetic of it. Is it meeting the vision of the designer and the director and the entire design team involved? If we hit all three of those goals, then we can move forward with the decision that we've made. But we do this through a lot of research, do a lot of Googling and reading books and talking to colleagues about different methods that they've used to do things. We design and draft out our ideas. We do a lot of 3D drafting and two-dimensional drafting. And then we prove that it'll happen sometimes we do it through structural math. Sometimes we build prototypes. Sometimes we just use previous experience, like we've done something before and we know that it works, so that we'll bring that into the current show that we're doing. Then after the engineering process, we start our drafting process. So we start taking every single piece of wood, piece of steel, every single bolt, and we put it all together inside of CAD to make sure that it all fits together and that it's all going to function the way that we're thinking it's going to function. This is still our best guess, right? Because it's still all in the computer. Once you get something into the real world, everything changes a little bit. So we're trying to be as accurate as possible when we're designing things inside of CAD. Then once we're done creating our models, we start laying things out on a piece of paper. I'll go back one slide, actually. The piece of paper in the bottom right-hand corner here, we take the elements that we have drafted and we put it on a 24-inch by 36-inch piece of paper, and we add dimensions and notes to tell the carpenters what materials we want them to use, how we want them to glue and screw the boards together, how we want them to weld it together, what size holes to drill, what bolts to use, what different pieces need to go together in a certain way. So we make lots and lots of these drawings for the carpenters to have a roadmap to actually build these things. The other cool thing that we have that we just started using this year, Court Theater, we're storing their CNC router, which is in our shop for the next year. It's a computerized machine that allows us to cut things in high detail and high accuracy. So we're allowed to create, or we're able to create things that a human just can't create because it's a computerized cutting machine that will actually cut for us. So this has added a lot of detail to our process and what we can actually produce out of the shop. So it does take quite a bit of programming in order to get the machine to function properly. Then we go into scheduling. When is this going to happen? How is this going to happen? What specific unit needs to start being built? When is it going to be done being built? When does it go to the paint department? Then when does it get handed to electrics or to the rehearsal studio? Or what is the flow of everything through the shop, and who touches it? When do they get it? And when does it happen? Is a really, really big part of technical direction, to make sure that things are done when they need to be done. Because opening day, that's not moving, right? So we have a hard deadline somewhere. So we have to get all these things. We have to be highly organized and really, really scheduled on how things go through our facilities. Cool. And I'll hand it back to Jon.
Yeah, so once we've gotten through all of that, we get to start builds. There's a process shot from Frankenstein for anyone who remembers that show. Here's a quick look at our team. So Lookingglass overall has a pretty small staff compared to a lot of the theaters in town. We run basically on an overhire system. So Chris and I are the only full-time staffers out at the shop. Everybody else comes in on a show-by-show basis. But we've been lucky the last few years, and we have had a lot of returning workers over the last few years. Lee Moore is there. She's our painter. Amanda Herman is our props person. They've both been with us for quite a few seasons now. And then Kira is our head carpenter, Kenny's our lead carpenter, and Skate is our carpenter. They all basically more or less do the same amount of work out on the shop floor, making the show happen. Yeah, those are for this season so far. These are the folks that have been working with us out in the shop to build the shows. Our shop is located out in Westtown, about 2 miles or so from the theater. It's a 14,000 square foot facility. Minus the office, it's about 12,000. So if you've seen that number around, that's where that comes from. And that's where we do everything. We do all of our wood fabrication there. Our steel and aluminum welding also is happening there. That's of course where we have our CNC router that Chris mentioned. That's also where we store everything. So any of the parts for the audience risers, any stores, shows that might return, like Steadfast and Soldier, all of that is stored out there. And then, yeah, here's the look at the CNC router in action. Like Chris said, it's a computer controlled machine that we draw it up in CAD, and then it moves around and gives us a very accurate cutout of what we're trying to do. In the past, before we had the CNC in the shop, we've had some pretty complicated stuff that would just be days and days of a carpenter using a jigsaw to cut everything out. Having the CNC available to us streamlines the process way more, and just allows us to do more with the time that we have. Lets us be way more efficient.
That is so cool.
This is the look at the paint deck side of the shop. So our shop is split right down the middle, kind of half and half. One side is where we build everything, wood, metal, what have you. Then the other side is where our paint crew works. It's just a big open space that we can lay everything out, and then they all do all their paint work here. So if you saw Her Honor Jane Byrne, there's a shot of the floor laid out in the shop where our painters were able to do all their work there. And then the show deck for Lucy and Charlie is on the left there. Yeah, it just is it's a very time-consuming process to paint everything. So letting the painters do as much as possible out there saves a ton of time in the theater and lets them do their process in a nice controlled environment. As far as supporting the build goes, during this whole time, as the build is happening, we're still doing all the paperwork. We're still, as things are drafted, or as things are being built, we're continuing to push construction drawings out to the floor for the next thing. So the carpenters, welders have things to continue to work on throughout the entire process. We're making sure we continue to purchase things. We often are teaching different construction techniques, managing what to build, schedule. All of that happens the entire build process. It's not just in the pre-build phase at the start.
There we go. And then we head into what we call changeover. We have to take the show that's on stage, off stage, and put the next show on stage, right? So we change it over. That process starts with strike. Also, we take down the entire set. Strike usually lasts about a week. So we have to take all of the seating that was set up for one show, take it down, and we have to take the entire set down. And a lot of times we have to take most of it all back to the scene shop, which is about 20 minutes off site. So we rent a truck, we load everything up, we have to get it out through a little door, walk across the parking lot and put it in a truck, and then drive it to the shop. And then the carpenters at the shop, after we're done with our changeover, we'll start breaking those pieces down to go to recycling or trash.
So once the old set is out, we go into what we call our reconfig week, which is the week where we change around the seating configuration. So that's actually where we are right now. Is we have just finished pulling out all of the risers for Her Honor Jane Byrne. And since Lookingglass Alice is now our next show, we are in the process of setting up the balcony and riser system for that show. As you can see, there's a whole pile of stuff that we have to install each time that we do this.
And these are pictures from yesterday. So that's like the status of the space. So then after we have set up the seating, or most of the seating, sometimes we leave sections out as staging areas to put the next set on stage. We start the loading process. We take the set that we've built at the shop and it's been painted at the shop, we load it into a truck, drive it over here and load it all into the space, and then we start setting it up. So, and then this process lasts about a week also. So changeover is usually about a 3-week time span, a week for strike, week for reconfig, and a week for load in. And then after load in, we're in tech.
Yeah, tech is a whole big process for us of making the show happen. Every show is different, so sometimes we're working with the circus designers to figure out how the scenery interacts with them. A lot of times we have automation to figure out. In the case of the large fish that you see there, that was an automated unit that flew in and out. And during this whole process, we've also had to start working on the next show, because as soon as one show opens, we're starting build on the next one. So tech for us is a big balancing act of making sure that we can finish out the show that is about to open, while also making sure that we're ready for start a build on the next show.
And that's pretty much our process. Does anybody have any questions or want to see something again? Or
it is rather mind-blowing, like the amount of work, and it always just seems magical, but it's like it's magical when we see it, but to realize all that goes into it, it's wild.
I love seeing behind the curtain and seeing what goes into it and the thought process and how it comes to be, because to Heidi's point, I think you walk into the theater and you're like, wow, but then you don't think about how it came to be. I think the same thing with the play, like when you get to hear the idea and how it was generated and how it was written. So I think it's so cool to see how it comes from the idea generation to the final product. You guys are really talented.
What always blows my mind too is is the first day of tech, when we're all in the room, or we're almost all in the room together, at least in the pre-pandemic days, and to realize how many people it takes to put on a play. It's it really does it's kind of mind-blowing.
Well, and the level and variety of skill sets that are necessary to make it happen. Like it's broad. There's a broad range there. And everyone has to like be at the top of their game in order for it to all work together and frankly be safe.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite part of the whole thing is just collaborating with the whole team to find the best solution that looks the best, functions the best, and is the safest thing that we can do. That's just my favorite part.
Yeah, the puzzle of everything. There's always a lot of puzzles in all directions when making a play, you know, from the writing to the making and the building. And a lot of collaboration.
Well, I was curious with the set pieces from previous sets. And like, do you guys recycle those, or what's like the process with that?
Yeah, it depends on the show. Some shows that we know are going to come back, we try and store as much as possible. So, you know, Tin Soldiers is a show that we've done multiple times and we'll know will probably come back in the future. So that entire set is back in the shop right now. Same with bits of, you know, Alice, of course, Moby Dick, and there's bits of a few others. Shows that we probably won't do again, or at least won't come back in a while. We try and save and reuse as much as we can. So, you know, things like walls and all the hardware and all of that kind of stuff, we try and keep around. And then anything past that, if it's metal, we'll break it down and send it off to a recycler. And then there's the last of it, which does just go to the dump, unfortunately, which is always a little bit of a bummer, but it's part of the business. But we do try and make an effort to limit that as much as possible and save and reuse and recycle what we can.
Jon, what's your favorite show that you have worked on? Like, what was one that you found really satisfying? And I'm not asking you, Chris, because there's only been one so far.
Yeah, I think, so I've been here since fall 2017. The first show was Plantation. So that's kind of the timeline reference. But I think the favorite one that I worked on was Frankenstein by Catlin. Yeah, I think the set for that show is great. I think we had a real good team in the room, and there are a lot of fun rigging projects on that one that I got to tackle. If you remember from the slideshow, there's one early on where it just has ropes all over the space. So there were, I think it was 14, 16 lines that had to fly in, many of them independent of each other. So figuring out that whole process was, well, you know, it was stressful at times. So it was a lot of fun. You know, we here at Lookingglass like to pretend that we have you know, a whole big fly system with, you know, 100 feet up above the roof, and we just don't get that here like some of the other theaters have. So trying to pretend that we're a big proscenium house in this little tiny space presents a lot of fun challenges that I always enjoy working on.
And that's why you're the person for the job, because
Yeah.
both of you really like love challenges, and you kind of have to if you're going to work at our theater company, because we're always, you know, pushing the envelope and you know, trying to do some crazy things. So
And never going to do the same thing twice.
Right.
Nope, never.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well then, Chris and Jon, thank you so much for taking the time to come speak to us, for putting together the presentation.
Yay.
It's so
Thank
incredible
you.
to see how much work you put into it. And I think it's really educative. So thank you so much. And Jim and Jill, thank you so much for spending time with us. If you have any other questions, we'll hang around for a little bit afterwards, or feel free to send us an email. But thank you so much, and this is going to be a first of a series that will be starting throughout the year. Okay. Thank you and have a
Thanks,
good
you
night.
guys.
Stay
Thanks
warm.
for having us.
We good?